ready to profit from the deflationary spike event that's coming? Now, I'm going to tell you it's coming very soon. I'm going to show you a few charts right here. First thing is, the Fed did a stress test not long ago of these top banks. And they said, hey, you know, everything's fine, everything's fine. They passed the stress test and stuff. But, you know, it's not fine. What we're dealing with is they're not much above what Lehman Brothers was in 2008. The leverage ratio of Lehman's was 3.3%, or 30 to 1, back when Lehman's failed. And one of our worst banks for this right now is Morgan Stanley. Now remember I said that Lehman had a 3.3% leverage, 3.3% ratio of leverage at 30 to 1? Lehman Brothers, that's what Lehman Brothers had. Well, Morgan Stanley's right now is 28 to 1. And their leverage ratio is 3.57. It's not much different than Lehman's was. Now, if you take a look at Deutsche Bank's even worse. This deflationary shock event that's going to hit, this doesn't allow the markets to move much. Now, let's take a quick look at the market chart over a period of time, the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And what we see here is the Dow Jones Industrial Average over 10 years. Now, if you take a look, it was below 7,500. Not that long ago, you know. We're just talking back in the 2008 crisis. And it's just been one steady march up after another. Now, if what I want you to notice is these bounces down on its steady march up. There's a number of bounces down. Each one of those bounces down is when they ended a stimulus program. Quantitative easing 1 ended, the market bounced down. Then they started another stimulus program, quantitative easing 2. The market went up again. They ended quantitative easing 2, the market went down again, and so on. But continuously, mostly it marched up, and up and up and up. Operation Twist went up again, all the way up. And now, what we have is a market that is absolutely bloated. Everything is overvalued. It's worse than the NASDAQ crisis back in the dot-coms, back when they had the dot-coms. This is worse. This is horrible, what we have right now. It's ready for a fall, but it can't fall. They have to keep it up. They have to keep this market trading in a very narrow range, very high, and keep it moving ever so slightly higher. They just can't let it fall. It's because these companies like Morgan Stanley can't take more than, Morgan Stanley itself probably couldn't take more than maybe, say, a 4% fall in the stock market would be about all that they could take to keep their head above water. And other ones of these companies, it might take 6% or 8%, you know, because of their leverage ratio. What we have here is a number of them that would fail, and including J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan's in at 20 to 1. This would trigger everything else. And if the stock market tanks, we're going to have a deleveraging of the system. The system is so highly leveraged, and this is going to cascade into an effect that would cause a sudden deflationary shock that I've been talking about for a long time. But where an awful lot of economists miss the point is they underestimate the government, the government's ability to stop a deflationary shock like this. Never forget that Ben Bernanke got the nickname Helicopter Ben because he basically told everybody what their plan is. See, the Fed really only has one actual tool that they can use. It's an awfully powerful tool. But that tool is to create liquidity, or to create money. It's a money creation tool. And believe me, if that tool was a hammer, they know how to use that hammer. They know how to use it very effectively. They can create as much money in the form of digital dollars as there are leaves on the trees, and believe me, they will. An awful lot of economists think to themselves, "Oh, they can't create 20 trillion. They can't create 50 trillion. They can't create 100 trillion." The answer is yes, they can, and yes, they will. And they don't mind destroying the dollar. They don't mind utterly, absolutely destroying your savings. Look how your savings have been eroded already. Just look at it. Think back 10 years ago. When you go to the grocery store, how much it would cost you. And now think about how much it costs you for the exact same amount of groceries. When's it going to start to sink in to a lot of people who have been saving their money, savers, in the form of digital dollars at the bank, in the bank account? When's it going to finally sink in, hey, we're not getting our value for our money. Our money is being eroded every year. At a certain point, it's going to start to sink in. And this sudden deflationary shock event is going to act like, how can I put this? It's going to make these people who are savers suddenly feel like, hey, you know, I did the right thing. Because suddenly money is going to be in short supply. You're going to watch the money supply shrink like never before, and suddenly we're going to feel some real deflation during this deflationary shock event. I'm not calling it deflationary shock event for nothing. I mean just that. It's going to be some profound deflation, and it's going to hit suddenly, and they are going to quash it. They are going to destroy it, the government. They're going to step in, and they're going to pump the money into the system that's needed, the needed liquidity. Because if they didn't, this deflationary shock event would bring everything down. It would bring down the entire system. It would have the same effect as the banks actually failing and jailing the bankers. And you know they're not going to jail the bankers. You know they're never going to put any of those bankers in jail. You know that they're not going to really allow the system to completely collapse, because it would mean the end of the end for them. It would mean that they would be attacked by the people, to put it mildly. They would have pensioners screaming, running down the street after them, saying, "Where is my Social Security check?" They would have to answer to the people. And they're never going to answer to the people for what they do. They're always going to kick the can down the road. But this requires them kicking the can down the road much harder than they've ever kicked it before. They're going to have to open up the floodgates of money. See, what they've been doing, they've been tightening. If money was water, they've been turning off the garden hoses for the last couple of years. They've been tightening everything. And there was so much liquidity in the system, excess liquidity in the system, sloshing around there, that we haven't really felt the effects altogether. We're going to feel the effects suddenly of them turning off the money. They're thinking that they're getting away with it right now. But what they're really doing is they're boxing themselves into a corner, because when this comes, it's going to come suddenly. It's going to be a deflationary shock event. It's probably going to start with the markets, the stock market, dropping. A sharp decline, very suddenly and unexpectedly. They're going to have to react to it, because then suddenly after that, you're going to have these companies that are too big to mention, companies that are too big to fail, suddenly failing. And they're not going to know what to do. And so what they're going to do is their first reaction is they're going to shut everything down to try to hold back the chaos. They're going to have a holiday. And during this holiday, you're not going to be able to get your money. During this holiday. Then everybody is going to scream for them to fix it. Fix this problem. They're going to be required to fix it. And the fix is going to come in the form of money creation. And by the time you can get your money, you're on the other side, your money is going to be going down in value so fast that you're not going to know where to or what to spend it on quick enough to actually get any value out of it. This deflationary shock event is what's going to lead to the hyperinflation. This is what I'm saying. The hyperinflation is not going to be something that goes real slowly, and you watch the inflation go up just a little bit day after day after day. It's going to come in fast, but it's going to be a reaction to what the government does to try to fix this crisis. And you're not going to be able to, especially when it comes to certain things that people are going to want to get their money into, that are going in the opposite direction. You're not going to be able to get into them quick enough. I'll try to explain to you how it'll be. Say you've waited and you think, okay, gold and silver is going to go down in price. Specifically, you're thinking about getting a bit of silver. And you're thinking to yourself, hey, you know, it's going to go down in price, going to go down in price, and you've been waiting for a long time. The deflationary shock event hits. Everybody is running into the dollar for protection. They're selling everything. What's going to happen is, that's great. Your dollars are going to have more buying power. You'll see everything on sale. You'll go to your local store, and it'll be a closeout sale, and they'll be selling things at only a percentage of what things are actually worth. And so that'll be great for just a little while until the government reacts. And when the government reacts, then you're going to go in to get your silver, and there isn't going to be any there. Everybody will be in there ahead of you. There will be no physical available. And then you're going to watch the price of that stuff go up, because that's when the government is going to be in what I call the great print. The great print of all prints. But they're not really printing. What they're going to be doing is they're going to be creating money, creating liquidity in the system digitally. Massive amounts of money into the system and digitally to prop up these banks. They're going to do exactly the same thing as they did back in 2008. They've already showed us. They've already showed us what they're going to do. It's the only thing they can do. They can't let the system go down. They would, not only would we die, but they would die too. And they know it. And believe me, they're more scared of dying than you are. Much more. That's why they're politicians. They're real chickens. The bunch of them. You know? And so they're going to do what they need to do to prop this thing up. If it requires 10 trillion, they'll make 10 trillion. If it requires 100 trillion, they'll make 100 trillion. This is what they did back in 2008. They asked Ben Bernanke, they sat him down over there and they said, Ben, where did those countless billions of dollars go? Tell us. And he just simply looked them square in the eye and said, no. I'm not telling you where it went. He said it went to banks. He said it went to banks, foreign banks and stuff. And they wanted him to be specific. And he wasn't going to be specific with them. This is the biggest money laundering scheme on the face of the earth. And what they're doing is, you, and you, they are robbing you of your money you saved. They're going to rob you quite suddenly of your money you're saved through hyperinflation. Not just regular inflation. See, they've been robbing you of your money. Since 1913 till now, the dollar's lost about 98% of its buying power. So they've already robbed 98% of your money. They're going to rob that last 2%. And they're going to do it very rapidly when they do it. Boys, it's coming. So I would say, if you're smart, you'll get geared up for this thing. You'll take and you'll minimize your exposure to fiat monies, to paper money. It's not even paper anymore. It's digital money. You'll limit your exposure to digital money. First off, you'll keep some cash on hand for an emergency, because when these banks close and stuff, you're going to need a little bit of cash. You're going to need to get out there, and you're going to need to buy that jug of milk, or that little bit of gas for your car or whatever. And they're not going to be taking the ATM machines will not be open, or if they are open, they're going to give you a very limited supply of cash will come out of the ATMs. You'll have to wait in the lineup in the hot sun for 6 hours to get 20 bucks. And oftentimes you'll get there to the end of the lineup, and the guy will say, well, the machine's empty of cash. We're not going to fill it until tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. And when's it going to be empty? Tomorrow morning at 8:30. Everybody that's in there first. And there will be fights in the line to get to the ATM, to get that money that they put in the ATM. That's how tight it's going to be for money during the deflationary spike event. For money. But as soon as some government fixes this problem, and they will fix it, then you're going to see the floodgates of heaven open up for money. Everybody's going to have all kinds of fiat. So it's going to go from nothing to the sky opening up and fiat coming out from every cloud. That's when it's all going to reverse, and that's when the gold and silver is going to go up. Is when they change that gear, when they make it so that the money comes from the heavens. They call it helicopter money. That means it's going to come down from heaven. Money from heaven. And don't believe that they won't do it. They've already got the government has already thought of these programs. They got them. One of them's called a universal income for all Americans. You know, they might have a little bit different name for it in different countries. You know, guaranteed income's another name for it. It's basically the same scheme. How the scheme works is they give everybody out there an income. All you got to do is just if you can come in and they hold a mirror in front of your face, and if there's fog in the mirror when you're breathing, then you qualify for like $30,000 a year. More money than you're making at your job. So, I mean, how does this work? This works something like the guy who's a farmer. He comes in from the field, and he says, Mama, he says, I can fly. And she says to him, well, how do you do it, son? And he says, well, you know I'm strong as a mule, Mama. And she says, yes, I know how strong you are, son. I've seen you lift the cow and carry him across the yard many a time. He says, yes, Mama. He says, I can lift 300 pounds. He says, and he says, what do I weigh, Mama? And she says, well, you're pretty light. You don't weigh much. He says, Mama, I weigh 150 pounds. She says, oh, is that what you weigh? He says, yeah. And he says, well, guess what? I'm going to fly. See these boots I got? I got straps on these boots, right? And Mama says, yeah. He says, watch this. And he grabs a hold of the straps and he starts pulling. You know? This is how he's going to fly. He says, I should be able to lift off. He says, I'm pulling 300 pounds. And I only weigh 150. And he's sitting there grabbing by his bootstraps, jumping up and down on the floor. Look, Mom, flying. Look, Mom. And each time he comes down, ka-thump, ka-thump, ka-thump on the floor. This is how they're trying to run our system. By going ahead and giving us a guaranteed income and just creating this money out of nothing, none of us will ever have to work again. 100% of the population can get $30,000 a month. Why work if you're only going to make $10,000 working? But this is exactly the same thing as the young guy trying to fly by lifting his bootstraps. For some reason, you'd think to yourself, hey, you know, if we're going to give $30,000 to every single citizen, this should pick the economy up. Everybody will have lots of money, and nobody will need to work. It should work. In your head, you say, well, it should work, but there's something wrong with it. There's something wrong with it. There's something really wrong with it. And these Keynesians haven't figured out what's wrong with that formula. Simple as that. So this whole thing's going to end badly. That's one method that they'll get the money out there. There's another method. It's very simple. They just go and they find out from your social security number. Here in Canada, it's a social insurance number, but it's the same darn thing. They've got your number on file, your social security number. They just look it up in their records, and they can find out exactly how much tax you've paid, all the way through your taxation history, your income tax, right? They're just going to go in. Now, you're going to find this hard to believe, but I think that they'll probably do this during the crisis. They just go in and they just write you off a check for that entire amount. Income tax refund to every citizen that's paid taxes. So if you've paid it over the years, you might be amazed at how that's added up. Every year paying 3, 4, 5,000, 8,000 tax, whatever you pay. But then you go back like 30 years. You might be amazed at how big a check they'll send you. But I'm going to tell you what, when you get that check, don't walk to cash it. Run. Because your neighbors will be getting the same check. All up and down your street. And don't walk into the store. Run. Because you're going to see the price of goods go up faster than anything you've ever seen in your life. Yesterday, you'll be able to buy an apple for $1. Today, it's $10. Tomorrow, it'll be $100. Don't walk, run in. What's that going to do to the money that you've worked so hard to save that's in the bank? If you're getting my point. And that's when you're really going to see these assets, like Bitcoins and cryptocurrencies and gold and silver, going to the moon as a hedge against the hyperinflation. So how high could they go? If they're going up daily, anybody who owns them would be crazy to sell them to you for dollars. When the government's destroying the dollar high, wide, and handsome. Now, the government wants to do this. They want to destroy the dollar. And the reason why is it gets them out of a trap. It allows them to pay everybody what they owe. No fuss, no muss. And when they get back down to where the dollar is completely worthless, then they just do a big reset. They've done this time after time again in different countries. It's just that it hasn't happened here yet, and don't think that it can't happen here. I mean, the Chinese, going back, they tried paper currencies, and it always ends in failure in the end. It's amazing that the dollar has actually lasted this long, all the way from 1971 until now. It's well, we had the dollar before 1971, but when 1971 is when we went off the dollar being convertible to gold. So the dollar basically became worthless at that point. And that's when, well, not completely worthless. It was pegged to oil. But it's only loosely pegged to oil. This whole thing is going to end badly in the end. It's going to end in a hyperinflation. And you got to prepare for it now. You've got to position yourself. I've been preaching this message. I'm going to continue to preach this message because I know that there's people out there who are going to listen to what I got to say, and they're going to save themselves. They're going to save themselves a lot of agony in the end, ultimately, when this thing actually finally hits. And I know you've been hearing this coming for a long time, and it hasn't hit. But believe me, it's coming. We're getting really close now. So listen, thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next article. Bye.